Good evening and welcome to the October 10th meeting of the Dover-Sherborn Regional School Committee. My name is Judy Miller and I call this meeting to order at 6:32. We are pleased to hold this open meeting at Dover-Sherborn Middle School this evening and are also live streaming with DSC TV. Please note that this meeting is being recorded. Okay. So now, community comments. Do we have anyone on Zoom? No. Do we have any community comments? Hearing none. We will move on to our first agenda item, which is superintendent comments. Superintendent McCoy, would you like to take over?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Conklin, can you pull up the slides that are in the background?
That's a question. Can I? It's a great question.
That's okay. I will just start without them. Good evening, everyone. And this is our October meeting. So I would like to recognize all of the back to school events that have happened in the last month. As we discussed at our last meeting, it was a smooth opening, the smoothest since the pandemic, and people are feeling some normalcy. And I'd also like to recognize all 4 of our principals and their faculties for having wonderful open houses. In the last few weeks, I was able to attend both the middle and the high school open houses as a parent and as a superintendent. And I was thrilled to be able to attend my children's classes and hear from the teachers and the work that Denny has done with the educators in terms of identifying the 9 best practices in our district, to be able to hear pieces of them as teachers talked about their curriculum and their work with kids, primarily around building relationships with students, about giving students voice and choice, about making sure that the curriculum is relevant to the students and who they are as people and the world around them and their future, as well as providing students opportunities to develop their critical thinking and collaboration skills. So the work is already happening in lots of good places, and this is an opportunity, therefore, to use each other's strengths as educators to grow in areas where we need to and rely on each other for that knowledge base and that mentoring. The Challenge Success Panel. So this is year 10 for Dover-Sherborn as a partner district with Challenge Success, which is super exciting. As you know, we were the first district on the East Coast to become a Challenge Success school. Their fall conference is this coming weekend, Friday and Saturday, and we have been asked to present on a panel to talk about our work with Challenge Success. So myself and Chloe Ledger, who is a senior, are going to be presenting, representing Dover-Sherborn along with 2 other high schools to the larger group and talking about the work that we've done with the community, with parents, with educators in terms of them understanding the Challenge Success principles. And then Chloe's going to talk about how it affects her and her peers day to day and the positive changes that they've seen over time. So super exciting. And we'll be hosting the spring conference here. So stay tuned for more information on that.
Where's the conference that you're doing now?
It's at Bentley in Waltham this weekend. District events, as you know, the theme of going back to our roots, you'll see the plants continued through this slide deck. We want to make sure that this year we go back to all of the fundamental principles that our district kind of relies on as we make decisions about teaching and learning and students. So we have worked to bring back the basics of Challenge Success, the basics of the strategic plan, and the basics of the portrait of a graduate over the next several months. So you'll see the dates up here. Most pressing is November 8th. We will have the kind of Challenge Success 101 presentation, which is called the Well-Balanced Student. That'll be at 6:30 in Mudge Auditorium. We'll have the Well-Balanced Child, which is the elementary version, in January. We're still settling on a date for that. Denny and I are going to do our State of the District in January, which will be also an opportunity for he and I to not only launch the strategic plan with the larger community who might not watch school committee meetings, but also talk about our progress on our goals to date relative to the district goals. Last year, as part of our community conversations, we heard that folks would love to learn more about restorative practices and how those interact with our disciplinary system. So we'll be doing a presentation in February around that. And then for those of you who are here in 2019, when we had the Academic Innovation Committee that came together to develop a portrait of a graduate, we had a panel of Dover-Sherborn and Boston folks from a variety of fields come and talk about what it is that they think the next iteration of people in their field are going to need for skills and training, as well as a college panel that talked about kind of what they're looking for from college or from high school graduates matriculating into college and how that world is kind of changing. We want to bring those people back to remind us about the importance of the course of graduate skills and how we settled on them. So again, going back to the roots, back to the basics, so everybody has a chance to re-ground themselves if they need a refresher, or for anybody new to the district or a young family who hasn't had a chance to engage in this work yet, can become familiar with it. All right, moving on. The calendar task force. So we have had 4 official meetings of the calendar task force since the spring, and Judy is a member of that calendar task force, and so feel free to fill in any of the blanks. We have, as you know, sent out a survey to students, staff, and faculty, student, staff, and families to get information about kind of the priorities of folks and what they think holidays should be recognized, kind of the needs of their families, the needs of students in terms of workload and having some accommodations. We had our last meeting last week right here, and we have over 800 survey responses, which is unheard of for Dover-Sherborn. So a lot of information. We've also looked at what other comparable districts are doing, specifically those in the Tri-Valley League, since we compete with them athletically, and it's good to be on the same page. We've also looked at other districts that we aspire to be like in the country who might be thinking creatively outside the box, and have looked at attendance data for our students and staff on various holidays that we don't yet recognize and whether or not we've seen changes and spikes. So we broke up into groups last week. We followed a protocol, did a deep dive into different areas of the data. We have more research to do before our next meeting on November 1st, and then we'll continue to process the data. As we talked about, there's really 4 possible outcomes that will be presented to you as a school committee in January. One is maintaining our current calendar, which is all of the required calendar dates, as well as 4 that we choose to acknowledge, which are Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, Christmas Eve, and Good Friday. We can keep that schedule. We can reduce some of those non-mandated holidays, eliminate some of those non-mandated holidays, or add some additional based on the growing and changing population of our community, or a combination. Maybe we reduce and add. So that's what we're looking for. We'll do our best to find some sort of consensus among 1 or 2 proposals to give you to think about and then vote. I will say there are a variety of opinions and voices, and trying to capture them in a succinct number of proposals is going to be tough.
Yeah.
But we'll do our best to let you know kind of what the majority is saying. On the next slide, just an update that I continue to participate in the new superintendent induction program. I continue to meet weekly with my coach, John Sills, who's fabulous. We meet every Wednesday, and he's on speed dial should I need something from him during the week, including today. We have 4 official in-person sessions. We're now the year 2 cohort, so all of us in year 2 of our superintendencies will meet 4 days in person, including tomorrow. And we have 5 times where we meet in the morning remotely so that we can stay within district. In addition to that, the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents is continuing their READY work, which is racial equity and diversity and inclusion work as a system. And so they're hoping that a lot of this work will trickle down to the work that we're doing here in Dover-Sherborn, as well as other districts across the state. I am part of the Foundations 2, the second year of the work with MASS. And we are focused on a book called Immunity to Change. And what I love about this is not only are we working with some of the leaders in READY from Harvard University, who I know from way back in my graduate years, but also having an opportunity to take the learnings from the book and then have meetings throughout the year where we take turns bringing a case study of something happening in our district and try to apply the philosophy of that immunity to change, which basically is premised on, long story short, research shows that if a heart doctor had 7 patients that they told you have to change your lifestyle or you're going to die, only 1 of those patients will actually change their lifestyle. That having motivation is not enough, that we have individual beliefs and a collective mindset that affect the way that we approach. So as leaders, not only do we have to consider the individual beliefs of everyone we work with, but the collective mindset of the district and how to navigate that to make change happen. So I'm interested in learning more. We've just dipped our toes in the water, and I will certainly keep you apprised as the work goes on. But certainly part of that adaptive leadership we talked about, we can change technical things, we can change the calendar, we can change, courses that we teach, but the adaptive piece of changing minds and changing hearts is tough, and I'm hoping that this will help us get better at doing that. Next slide. Mr. Conklin, I think you're up.
All right, just a few updates from teaching and learning, some things I've been up to. Over the past couple weeks, I've been meeting with our middle school curriculum leaders and our high school department chairs to talk about their goals for the year, the things that they're working on. We've been going and doing walkthroughs throughout classrooms, so it's been nice having that touch point with all of our teacher leaders and seeing what all of their departments are going to be up to this year and thinking how that aligns with our work around best practices that we began earlier in the year. So that has been nice, especially getting into the classrooms and getting to chat with students. We're really excited that we launched our Ideas course today. So you might remember as part of the new DSCA contract, we said that teachers that join the district starting this year have 3 years to take a course related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. The one that the district offers is called Ideas. It's part of the MISS. It deals a lot with thinking about one's own identity, ideas of bias, anti-racism. So that course launched tonight. Actually, they're still meeting as we speak. So it's 10 different sessions. It's a hybrid course. We had 21 educators sign up for it. A lot of them were first-year teachers. I would say 2/3 are veteran teachers that are in the district that were really interested and excited to explore these ideas. It's really nice that we have our own Dover-Sherborn cohort because they can really get to know each other, talk about things related to the district, versus sometimes when you just take the course, you're teachers from all over the place. It'll be nice to really bring it home to Dover-Sherborn and think about how we can apply some of the ideas to our own practices in the community. So we're excited about that, and hopefully it'll be something that we offer annually, but just really happy with all the people that expressed interest in it. This is also goals season as part of the evaluation cycle. So our teachers have been setting their student learning and professional practice goals. We did it a bit differently this year. In the past, central office and teaching and learning has sent out some proposed goals for teachers that they could adopt with some measurements and benchmarks. This year, what we really wanted to do is we wanted to empower building leaders and empower teachers to come up with their own student learning and professional practice goals. So we wanted to make sure that the district goals for the year were aligned with the individual school improvement plans, and then teachers and buildings could look at those things together and come up with what they thought were going to be meaningful teacher student learning goals and professional practice goals. So as a result, at the secondary level, all the departments pretty much are focusing on best practices and student engagement, but the flavor of each student learning goal and professional practice goal is tailored towards some of the projects that departments have been working on, also tailored to the curriculum audit, which we're continuing for our second year in a row. So these are just some sample goals. So you can see high school English professional practice goal is to collaborate with other department members around aspects of the writing process, including the feedback loop. So they're really looking at one of our best practices around individualization and feedback and figuring out what is the most effective way to give feedback to students on writing and what is the most effective way to make the writing process engaging for all of our high school students. What's really interesting, two of the English teachers that teach AP Lang, our AP US History teacher, and our AP Bio teacher are all working together on a shared professional practice goal to work on writing across disciplines. So it's really neat to see that it's interdisciplinary work going on this year. And then you can see some sample middle school student learning goals and professional practice goals. So the professional practice goal around the best practices and allowing teachers to decide which best practices they want to focus on and grow this year. Student learning goal, thinking a little bit about assessments and how students can demonstrate their understanding through multiple ways. That goes along with our best practice of student choice and student voice, and showing what they know through ways that best coincide with their strengths. So these are just some of the sample goals, and it's fun watching these different goals come in And I have to give a lot of credit to the building leaders and department heads and curriculum leaders who have been having great conversations with teachers in their departments and really making sure that everything feels like it aligns well between district goals, school improvement plans, department goals, and the various initiatives we have going on. Last thing that I can comment on is that we're currently in full planning mode for our full day, November 27th, Professional Development Day. The theme of it this year is on how we empower our students to take ownership over their own learning. So very much in line with these ideas of engagement and our best practices. So we put out a call recently for teachers around that theme to submit workshop proposals. We have a professional development committee that will be meeting to go through those proposals. We've been working on afternoon breakout sessions. One of the things that I'm very excited about at the region is that we're giving teachers time to meet in grades 6 through 12 departments. So we share campus, but you'd be surprised that sometimes there isn't as much collaboration between the buildings as we'd like. So it's really valuable time to have the 6 through 12 science department, the 6 through 12 math department get to meet and talk about how we're building kind of the vertical alignment of our skills and our content. So we built that into the November 27th Professional Development Day, and we also built it into another early release in March. Because upon my listening tour last year, that was something I heard a lot from teachers about, is they wanted that time to collaborate 6 through 12. So that'll be part of the day. The morning we'll have a keynote, and we'll also have some workshop sessions that we're offering. I'm very excited because the workshop sessions this year feel very timely and topical. We'll be offering a session on using artificial intelligence in the classroom for both of our elementary teachers and our secondary teachers. We'll be talking about how to increase literacy across content areas. So there's a lot of really good workshops that we'll be offering in the morning as well. So that is my updates. I think the next slides are on things that we will discuss later.
So we'll pause there with the slides, and if anybody has questions or comments.
Okay. Oh, I see. That's the next.
After,
yeah. That was really interesting. I love hearing that you're, trying to coordinate across different goals and the strategic plan and all of those elements in the school improvement plan. That's important because things shouldn't be happening in a silo. Questions, comments?
Maybe just a comment. I think the 6 through 12 planning sounds terrific. It's great for staff to really get to know each other more deeply in that way and also see how student skills progress. I love that idea, and so thank you for giving time for that. And also the writing across the curriculum with it sounds like AP teachers with different content areas. I feel like that could bring forth a lot of skills that are going to be relevant and helpful to other staff members and students. Do you know if once these kind of think tanks have some ideas, is there a process for sharing out, or might there be?
Yep, hopefully we'll be having the 4 teachers that are involved in that goal sharing what they've learned with the rest of their departments, and then figuring out some ways that we can also begin to integrate math teachers, some of our arts teachers as well, because we know that writing lives across all these different areas. But again, it's really about hopefully empowering these teacher leaders to be the ones that are leading this work and getting to share the great work that they're doing.
Thank you.
Can I just add one comment? The calendar looks very exciting and amazing, and if I may just add in, and hopefully you'll see this more soon, that on November 15th, SpanDS is going to be hosting at Mudge in the evening the current Screenagers movie. I believe it's the 3rd one they're putting out. And the licensing agreement that we have, we'll be able to show it multiple times, but that's kind of our first big community one. And then working with Laura McGovern and principals on potentially getting the student version into the classroom. So And that's November 15th.
it is, and hopefully very soon you see that cross your emails.
I went to a screen showing of that last year at Wellesley High.
Oh yeah,
and it was really valuable.
yeah. I've seen it, just the preview, but I was trying to go to that, and then someone was sick, and I couldn't go. But yeah.
No, it was great, and they had a panel afterwards.
Yeah,
that was helpful too. I think and hopefully we can it will be something that even if parents can't attend, that they could come back to it.
We'll be able to offer it in another way. Yeah,
Okay.
that's the hope.
Great.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks. All right, so Dawn, shall we move on to your report?
Sure. First up is the warrant report. So your monthly reports in there of all warrants that have been processed since your last meeting. And this is our first snapshot. I'm living for a very short term. I get to live in fiscal year 24. So here we are. Even though we're in month 4, if you think about it, we're only in month 1 of true operation. So what you have before you as of September 30th is still a little bit of work in process as we continue to get we're still hiring some educational assistants. We're still moving around some staff between classifications. And so the numbers are all there in totality. They might not be in the right line item, which so I didn't go too far deep into analysis at this point in time until we get a little more cleanup done. But I wanted to point out a couple of things. So on revenues, as you know, the budget was finally approved at the state level. And so it's always interesting to see where we land. So as far as Chapter 70 goes, the only change, the number stayed consistent through all the different approvals through the House and Senate and the final committee. However, what did change is just a slight amount in our school choice and charter school. So they're constantly taking attendance, enrollment numbers, and so it went down a little bit. So that's the $10,000 you see. That can easily go away because all we need is for the next time they do enrollment numbers, looking at that, someone else has gone someplace else. So, but if we swing just that back and forth, then we'll take that. Chapter 71, the transportation is always something that's like sort of throw a dart and see what happens. So the number is quite a bit higher than what was on our initial cherry sheet. The final budget that was approved intends to do a 90% reimbursement rate. Last year ended up being 79.5%. So there's a constant push at the legislative level to do 100% regional transportation. So 90 is pretty good. What they don't know, a little bit about transportation is similar to the circuit breaker world. It's based on your expenses from last year. Well, they don't know our expenses from last year when they do the cherry sheets. We all just filed our end of the year report that have the new numbers. So that's where that can continue to change a little bit. Okay. There's also been a little concern about the state revenues and being able to meet the budget. So at least sort of the advice givers out there for school districts are saying, be careful. If you've heard the word 9C cuts in the past, it's where the state can go and cut certain line items to make their budget balance. Way back when, that's why the regional transportation fund was actually set up, because they advised people to keep a little bit in that for potential 9C cuts. So I'm bringing that forward because if you look at the news, they're not meeting their revenue goals. And the shortfall is substantial enough that there's a little bit of concern. But luckily, the way this worked out, we've got $146,000 to swing around our way for transportation. So I always present these numbers, but know that it can easily sway one way or the other. Other than that, it's still new in the year, so the rest of the revenue numbers we're projecting to be as budgeted. On the expenditure side, that's where I said there's still some work in process, but I wanted to give you a few staffing updates, so things that have happened that we've had to react to post-budget. So if you think about it, we finalized the budget like in early March. Well, so much still happens in the school year, so much still changes in our operation. So we continue to be flexible, agile, and make the changes that we need, being respectful of the budget that we have. And so I've highlighted 4 areas where we have sort of altered a little bit from what we budgeted, but nothing was significant that is causing us to have concern as far as the bottom line. Any questions on the current monthly statements? Okay. So I'm giving you just an update on our capital projects update. So the roof air handlers, roof top, I forgot the top on there. Replacement project, remember, was the IMA initiative for last year. It's actually a pretty large project and a little bit more involved engineering than I think we initially had anticipated. The lead time for the delivery of the units itself is continuing to get longer versus shorter, and so our engineering firm actually recommended that we delay the installation until the summer of 25. So our goal was to do it this coming summer. We have July and August only for the install date. You get any kind of slip in your delivery time and we lose that window. Because of that, they really highly recommended that we move it to the 25, which gives us a little bit more time to work out some of just the basics. We have to do structural engineering studies, acoustical engineering studies. So these are kind of studies that we were like, oh, wow, this is bigger than we thought. Mm-hmm. So it's giving us time to do everything correctly. We'll still probably go out to bid within the next 2 months. It'll be able to secure probably a good landscape for bidding because we'll be out there early and people know it'll be a job they can secure. So we would have that going for us. And there's 1 or 2 rooftop units that are giving us issues right now. So we may need to invest a little bit of money into them. But in the long run, given the scope of the project, this makes sense. So we did notify both towns that their payments that were scheduled for November will be on hold. Town of Sherborn was very excited about that. And we will keep them updated once the project goes out to bid. I am a little concerned about our carrying costs of 1.2 and where that pricing is going to go. We have some flexibility with some capital money that I already have that we might be able to apply. I'm hoping that we can do that and not have to go ask the towns for some more. But that is anyone's guess right now until we get it out there on the bidding landscape and see what it comes in at. So I just wanted to be sort of transparent about that and that we already have a little bit of concern about where that number is going to land. For the ones that were sort of funded through your E&D, the high school floor replacement and the math wing is complete. I think it turned out really well. The bathrooms, I don't know if you had an opportunity to go over and take a peek, but they look really nice. And we're thrilled about the sustainability features. With that, the hand dryers, I mean, the fact that we don't have paper towels in those bathrooms anymore is huge for so many reasons. I can't even tell you. And I think sometimes when it looks really nice, I think it gets treated better. Yeah. So it's fresh, it's crisp, and we're just really excited to sort of see that play out. And now that can sort of be our prototype for the other bathrooms as we continue along that work. And the last project is the bleacher press box renovation. I actually have a status meeting with the architectural firm on Thursday. They've done a lot of more groundwork and have an updated cost estimate for us, which I'm keeping my fingers crossed on what that's going to be. And then the way this project is going to work, the bulk of it, which is the kit, which is the bleachers on the press box, we are actually purchasing through a cooperative purchasing group, which includes the kit and the installation. But there's several other pieces of the job that have to be bid out. And so that will be what we'll be doing over the coming months. And we're scheduled to do the installation of that this coming summer. So we'll keep you updated when we have additional monies. I'm waiting for a more accurate cost before we go and look for the last bits of fundraising, so I know exactly what we're looking for. But right now we've secured $300,000. We had estimated about $500,000. So I'm waiting just to see where that number lands, and then we do have a couple other opportunities to reach out for some funding. So I feel pretty good about that.
That's great.
And then fiscal year 23, like I mentioned, we just filed our end of the year report. Our auditors are going to begin their field work sometime later in October. Once they get started and we see how the process is going to work, I'll let you know when the audited financial statements will be presented. And as I previously communicated, our E&D is already certified, so I left it in there for you as a reference point. And not to leave fiscal year 25 budget, believe it or not, on October 23rd, we're working with our Budget Sense consultant to open up the budget. And then I'll roll out the communications to all of our buildings and we'll start that process for version 1 to be presented to the regional school committee at your December meeting. So with that in mind, if there's something that you want to discuss in November, or if there's any pre-budget discussion you want to have, I wanted to bring that forward so that at least we had some thoughts to incorporate into version 1, knowing that you have all the way until March. But if there was any thoughts or any areas of concerns that you had that you wanted us to address during this pre-building process, we could discuss that in November.
Thank you. As always, incredibly informative. Questions? Kate?
I have a question, and I think you explained this, but so since we're putting the roof handlers off a year, the money that's been earmarked for that from the 2 towns will just kind of wait,
Yep.
and we're just hoping it doesn't get more expensive.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Just want to make
So
sure we didn't have to go
their
back.
payment to us will be delayed. No,
Yes.
it still stands.
Yeah.
We're just going to alter the payment terms
Yep.
of that agreement.
Yep.
And then hopefully, like I said, we have some money set aside in our capital from previous E&D approval for the high school boilers, which we've been fortunate to be able to not have to attack those yet. I'm sort of using that as my placeholder, that if I need to come to you guys, we can reallocate that to the rooftop handler and deal with the boilers at a later time. So that's what allows me to sleep at night.
Okay.
Because there's $350,000 sitting there.
Okay.
And so that is sort of when I piece this all together, I feel like I'm hoping not to have to go back to the towns and ask for any more, that we've got current funds in-house that we can just have you vote to reallocate.
Okay.
Right. Thank you.
And the existing systems are in enough shape?
Yes,
To
like I
wait
said,
another
we've
year?
got 2 that have been giving us some issues.
Yeah.
But the preventative maintenance that we do we can survive another
Okay.
year or so
Okay.
with the way they are.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, great.
You can't wait for everything to break before you replace it.
No.
So we're at the point where there's like 1 or 2 that we're probably going to have to put a little bit of investment into to get them to survive.
Yeah.
However, the other ones are working. When we do this whole replacement cycle, there's all new code that will be bringing forward, right? So then it actually makes sense to replace them all and bring them all up to code, energy recovery, more energy efficiency, et cetera. So at times it makes sense, even if things are limping along, eventually you'll want to replace them. So I did ask if it made sense for us to still try to do all of them at once, and they said absolutely. That's the best way to go, because by the time you bring out the cranes and everything else, it's just in the manpower, it's better just to go ahead and attack it all at once. Now that's going to change our 5-year plan a little bit, because if you remember, we pushed off the roof restoration at the high school in order to do this equipment replacement. So that's going to go out another year. But at this point, we had some minor leaks that we're having repaired, but we don't see any significant issues with that we can't also delay that and not cause us any additional damage. So it's sort of like a domino effect a little bit. So we're going back and looking to see where we stand for what we'll bring forward for capital this year, now that we've got a few changes.
So this means I have to pray for a mild winter, not a snowy winter as I normally would.
Right, okay. Exactly. So we should be good.
Questions? Any other questions?
I had one question that recently had come from the community about use of our turf field being rented possibly to, there's a local in Dover, the men's over 40 soccer team that likes to play, and they were hoping to use it twice, a couple times a year. Or is that something we rent out to the community at all if there's openings in it? Is that a revenue?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think the issue with that is that using it at night with the lights. So that is something that we have sort of limited to our high school teams and the youth teams. With the amount of requests that they have, we sort of meet their needs. And we're not like other towns that have like a whole nother department that sort of runs their fields and schedules it. So right now our athletic department is who does all that. So we pretty much, our our operating protocols are take care of our high school teams, take care of the youth teams. And at this point, we allow outside groups to use our fields and our interior buildings during the day and at night, but we don't want to get into the business right now of renting the field at night with lights to outside groups and going beyond like the 8 or 9 o'clock time frame that we typically follow for those groups. If we did say we wanted to expand it, I think our youth groups would say, hey, we want more time. So that's sort of what we're up against right now. Yeah.
Is it more expensive to do it at night with running the lights as well? Is that?
Yeah, well, they get charged more, but it's also just having the staff to adequately be here and do that coverage.
Yeah.
We do run very lean here, and I think that's where, people say, well, Natick always has their lights on, and Medway always have their lights on. Well, it's not run by the high school athletic department.
Yeah.
And so when we do, so the turf replacement's coming up right in the next year or two. And so that might be an opportunity to say, okay, well, we're going to invest all this money. How can we get a little bit more payback? Well, maybe we need to hire someone who's going to, oversee this. And maybe we need to meet with everyone and see what really are your operating protocols for that. Because back in the day when those lights were installed, there were some agreements with the abutters as to how many nights it would be used, what time they would be on. So there's a lot of things that we have to consider that might not be apparent to someone who may be asking. But I think that we're pretty thoughtful about how we go about things right now. And so that's sort of how we're operating now. Things could change if we need another revenue source, but it's actually... It's not a big enough revenue source necessarily to go down that path right now.
Yeah. We recently responded to a community member, so I'm happy to send you the response so that you can have it to read through and reference if you need.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so moving on to the consent agenda. We have one consent item, which is the approval of the September 12th minutes, which are included in your packet, which I looked at and looked fine to me. Did anyone find anything that needs to be fixed or adjusted or anything? Okay, so can I have a motion to approve the minutes for the September 12th, 2023 meeting?
So moved.
Kate Potters, thank you. And do I have a second?
Second.
Colleen, thank you for the second. All in favor? Aye. Okay. It is unanimous. Now we will move on to the October enrollment report and the academic testing report, which I assume Superintendent McCoy, you will be.
Yes, with Mr. Conklin's help.
Okay.
So October 1 is kind of a magic day in the world of public education because we capture how many students we have in the district on that day, which is referenced by the Department of Education throughout the year for accountability measures, funding, etc. So having our ducks in a row for October 1st is really important. So as you'll see on that one slide, we have grades 6 through 12, which you are ultimately responsible for, listed here in terms of how many Dover-Sherborn and Boston students we have enrolled, for a total at this moment of time. Actually, as of October 1st, it was 1101. It could be 1102 or 1100 as of today, because there's always fluctuations from day to day. But that was what we captured. I think what's also interesting on the next slide is how our demographics have changed. So there's two slides. One is for the middle school and one is for the high school. So you'll see 2023 is the first column, and then you have 5 years ago and 10 years ago. And you'll notice some changes here in that, interestingly, 10 years ago, the middle school also had 5 English language learners, which is a high number, and was kind of unusual back then. However, we're back to having 5 English language learners, and the number continues to grow. Almost on a weekly basis. And so we are expanding the services that we provide for our students so that they can access the curriculum and the supports the teachers need to modify the curriculum. And you'll be hearing more about that in the months ahead. You'll see special education has remained somewhat neutral. However, the number of students that were sent out of the district, for example, 5 years ago, has been cut in half because we are now keeping them in district, which is fantastic. Oh, that's for the district, K to 12.
Okay.
K to 12. We didn't have by school, but that's all of our students, K to 12. And then you'll notice in terms of race and ethnicity, our diversity is growing.
Yeah.
Asian students have grown from 7 to 11%, Hispanic Latino from 2% to 5% in the last 5 years, multi-race from 3% to 7%, and the number of white students has decreased from 85% of the population 10 years ago to 72% today. If you look at the next slide, you'll see similar trends at the high school. Again, the English language learner population is growing. We currently have 7 students. I'll also note that our English language learners are categorized by levels. Level 1 means they have very little English. Level 5 means they're almost ready to graduate from the program because they're fully proficient. The number of students we have in levels 1 and level 2 is also growing. So their needs are more extensive than those in level 5. So something to note. Special education, remaining somewhat constant. Again, district-wide, you've seen the number of out-of-district students cut in half. And the same trends in terms of race and ethnicity with our overall white population, 89% 10 years ago to 70% today. So the information we shared last year when we were talking about the equity audit and our student population is captured here in the October 1st data over the last 10 years. Any questions on the October enrollment report before we move on to academic testing?
So I have a question. So you think the out-of-district is that sharp decreases as a result of the efforts we've made?
With the programming and the added supports here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't have data from 2013.
We don't. That was readily accessible that Kate could put her fingers on.
Yeah, that's too
I
bad.
gave it to them yesterday.
Oh, well, add it in then.
I didn't know why they asked me for it, but
they were digging hard.
It would just be really
absolutely.
interesting to see the 2013 data to verify that, but that's fantastic. And that benefits the kids as well. Mm-hmm. Go ahead. Colleen, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just back to the October 1st enrollment data. The number of Boston students in grades 7, 8, and 9 and 11, it's striking to see only 1 in the 7th grade. Is that because that was during COVID, there would have been sort of fewer students?
Yes, so our goal is always to have at least 2 in any grade level.
That's what I thought,
and sometimes students move or have a change in placement. Okay. We have been inviting students, ideally students join us in kindergarten and 1st grade so that they can have the full DS experience. However, we have been inviting students to join us in other grades, so that is an area certainly where we will work with Monique Marshall-Beal to see if there's students who apply this coming year so that we can increase the cohort in those grades.
Great.
Mm-hmm. So we had 49 in fiscal year 14. Out of 13, 14.
Oh, 49. Mm-hmm. Oh, see, so that really sort of proves it.
Yeah. Well, it's 49, 51.
27. Yeah. That really shows that, because around 2018 was when we started to really look at the SPED and
Bridge and grid.
Yeah, and all exactly. So that's terrific.
Yeah.
Other questions? All right.
Okay, and then we will move on to academic testing report. I'll do the launch, and then Denny can talk about some of the findings because he's been really digging in deeper into this information. But in your packet, you have the MCAS scores for the middle and high school, as well as our spring SAT scores and spring AP scores. And while Denny can highlight some of the trends and patterns there, we just want to remind you of the additional measures of success that we think are important in how we identify and measure success as a district. And as you know, one of my goals as a superintendent this year that you'll be evaluating me on is looking at these measures and developing a dashboard where we have all of this information readily available that we can go to and see shifts and trends over time. So it's not just a slide with the words, but we can track numbers to see changes and hopefully improvements in our academic performance of students, but also their social emotional well-being, the climate and culture of the school building, students' opportunities to post-secondary life, etc.
Yep, so just some highlights from some of this data that came in. So in terms of our advanced placement exams, we have 95% of our students last year scored 3 or higher on the advanced placement exams. We had a lot of increased access to AP statistics. So all of the full data set was included in your packets. But you might have seen when we were looking at the percentages of students that scored 3 or higher, that the number was a little lower for AP Statistics. AP Statistics is one of the classes that we've really tried to expand student access to. So kind of that mean average is a little bit lower because we've been able to expand enrollment, kind of drop prerequisites for it, and increase participation in AP Statistics. Last spring was the highest amount of AP tests that students have taken within the past 5 years. In terms of kind of post-secondary plans, 85.8% of last year's seniors were accepted into one of their top 3 college choices. So the 10-year average is 87.7%. But at least to me, that's a pretty staggering statistic that many of our students are able to get into their top 3 colleges. So we've been tracking that data. In terms of SATs, our average test scores and our percentage of students that are meeting the math and ELA benchmarks continues to increase from before or for when COVID happened. So suggesting that we're kind of seeing some of that post-COVID recovery in terms of SAT scores. Those numbers are interesting as well because we also have kind of fewer students that are taking the SATs because there are less schools now that are requiring the SATs as an admissions requirement. So that data continues to fluctuate a little bit in terms of number of students that are taking the SATs. In terms of the MCAS, so our grade 10 MCAS scores in ELA and math, the percentage of students that were proficient, meaning they either got meet expectations or exceeding expectations, rose from last year. So we saw growth in our 10th grade ELA and math scores. We're 44% higher than the state average. So that's another metric that we try to track is how are we doing as a district compared to how the whole state is doing. Grade 10 math, we had the 4th highest scores compared to all districts in Massachusetts. Grade 10 science, we had the 3rd highest scores compared to all Massachusetts districts. I met with the science department head today at the high school, and all of our students passed their science requirements. We were at 100% in terms of graduating with passing the science MCAS, which is fantastic. You can see that science is a big shining point. Our 9th and 10th grade science MCAS scores, 42% of our students exceeded their benchmarks, 45% of them met the standards. So that is a huge number of students who were proficient. At the middle school level, for grade 8 ELA, 80% of our students either met or exceeded their standards. That was up 8% from the previous year. Grade 7 ELA, 82% met or exceeded standards. That was up from 13% the previous year. And then when we're looking at math in grades 7 and 8, the scores remain pretty stable. So that is kind of the latest update on where we stand in terms of AP scores, SAT scores, college acceptances, and the MCAS scores. Superintendent McCoy and I will be meeting with both the principal of the high school and the principal of the middle school over the next few weeks to go through some more of this data with them. And then we're hoping that at a more micro level, kind of drilling down into the next level of data analysis, that they'll be able to provide you with that next level of analysis, probably at our November meeting.
Thank you. Questions?
I think Mark has one.
Yeah, I get caught up in numbers sometimes. And I'm curious about the 4th bullet point about the last year's seniors. It says accepted into their top 3. Does that mean all of the top 3 or one of their top 3? When we say 85%, do you know?
I believe it's one of
At least one of their top 3. Beautiful. All right, just double checking. That's good news either way. I just wanted to know. And then the other thought was when you said AP stats, I think somewhere in opening
The second
access.
one, yep.
Thanks, because I did see that in the spreadsheet, and I wonder if, opening access is excellent, and I am wondering if, let's just say historically only 15 kids would have get into the class, and now we have 30, right? Just imagine. Maybe the average score is a little lower, but to think about the top 15 or so, like, are they in some way doing poorer by opening access to others, or are they doing just as well or better? Like, just an interesting question, because I do love the concept and think it's always right to open access, and I'm curious about when an average gets lower, what's more of the background behind that? And obviously I know you wouldn't have an answer for tonight or anything, but just something to think about.
Yep, I can take a look at the distribution of the scores and definitely see what the trends look like.
Thanks.
I want to make one comment, which is 85% getting into their one of their top 3 college choices, and the 10-year average. I imagine, and my imagination is probably incorrect, but I would hope that our focus on challenge success and finding the right college for you, rather than simply applying to every school on earth, including all the Ivies, and has helped our students to find what's right for them, and that those top 3 choices are choices that are the right fit for those kids, which is why we've been successful there.
That's a good point.
Talking to John Smith, he had commented that a lot of students are choosing more like niche schools, small liberal arts colleges that best suit their needs. We've been seeing international schools that students have been applying to, expanding as well, schools like McGill. So I think, to your point, we have been seeing students that are trying to find the right fit in some of their top 3 choices. If you look in the packet also is the high school report. It shows college acceptances, and we've been seeing a lot more diversity in the colleges that students are going to as well.
That's excellent. Thank you. Other questions? Go ahead.
I'm just noticing the total number of AP students went up about 25 within the last 5 years. We added about 25, and the jump was really from 2019 to 2020. I love seeing that the scores did not go down by opening access. Overall, they've gone up. And so I just think that this is a great example of how challenge success benefits everybody, not just the kids you're letting into the classes or not making it easier to take them. It just also has increased our scores, which I think is fabulous and speaks to challenge success.
Anyone else? All right, so we shall move on to a discussion of the approval of the middle school field trip. We have a memo in our packet. Are you going?
So it's World Strides again. It's the same program that we used last year, which is our first time back to DC since the pandemic. Rave reviews by the students, the families, the business office, who has less finances to worry about because World Strides takes care of all of it. And so our teachers are hopeful that you'll approve the trip again, and we'll hope for good weather and success and fun for our 8th graders this year.
Okay, great. Does anyone have questions, discussion, or anything about this? Can we simply move to approve the middle school field trip to Washington, D.C.? Can I have a motion to that effect?
Sure. Motion.
Okay, Colleen, so moved, and
Second.
Angie. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. And then we'll move on to the high school field trip.
Actually, I have one post. It won't affect the vote, but just a question. Will there still be a Boston trip option?
Yes,
offered?
as far as I understand.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, Judy.
No, God, no. Okay, so we have in our packet the description of this Model UN program. Beth, can you?
Sure. So again, this is a program that we have participated in for years, and our students really enjoy and benefit from. It is a trip to Boston. The reason that you would be looking to approve it is because it's an overnight trip. But again, rave reviews. You saw many of the pictures and heard the success stories, in the spring. So we hope you'd consider providing that opportunity to our students again. Can I get you?
No, I'm okay. I'm going to just power through it. Questions, discussion?
How are the students chosen for the 18 juniors and seniors?
There are students who sign up for the club.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, so can I have a motion to approve the high school field trip to Boston for the Model UN?
So moved.
Kate Potter. And do we have a second?
Second.
Mark Healy, second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. All right. So now we simply have informational items that are in your packet, and I don't see the high school or middle school. Oh, did I miss something?
Those reports are just in the packet.
Yeah, they're just in the packet. I don't see them here, so if you have questions, you know how to.
I just have a question. The high school report that was shared in this form, is this it's very possible that I'm just not remembering. Is this a new format?
So we had, the 4 principals had worked together to try to identify kind of what their common pieces would be in their principal reports to the school committee.
She's talking about the school profile.
That's the other thing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
That's
the school
the
profile. That's an annual report.
It's in here.
It's just updated. So last year the format was entirely new and updated and fancy.
Yeah.
And this is just the next iteration of it.
Okay. And who is this? Is this sent out to?
So it's available on our website, and it's, we don't really send anything anymore, but
Right.
college representatives often will look at this information.
I just think it's
so that they
great.
can-
So I
sort of like the resume for students who apply. They go to this to look and see like what kind of caliber of your high school that you go to.
yeah. I know we did a district one.
It was very nice.
Anyway, I just think it's great, and so hopefully people will look at it.
Okay. Other questions? Okay. Items for the November 7th meeting.
So far we have budget guidelines and hopes and dreams, and some additional details about the MCAS analysis of the building levels.
Anyone else? Kate?
Yeah, I just wanted to, we talked about this last spring a little bit, and I just wanted to kind of make sure it doesn't fall off our radar, the potentially making CPR a graduation requirement and having juniors revisit at some point, all juniors revisit drug and alcohol education, whether it's in PE or it's a seminar, because they have it freshman year, but then not necessarily again.
Yes. So I'm happy to provide an update for November. I will add that to the agenda. I've been talking to Mr. Smith about it. I know he's been working with Laura McGovern in the wellness department on both of those topics.
Great.
Some of our wellness teachers are already CPR trained.
Yep.
And so initially, just to kind of to give you a preview, what they're thinking is that they'll roll it out as one of the electives in the PE program, one of the modules, to start, and then build up towards that potential requirement, kind of over time. And they're also discussing how to bring threads of the substance prevention and abuse modules into the higher grades, kind of a second dose. So I can provide more details on that.
Yeah, that would be great to have a report on that in November.
Thank you.
Other things for our November meeting? No? Okay. Well, then I think, can I have a motion to adjourn? Huh? Thank you, Colleen. Second?
Seconded.
Okay, all in favor? All right, we adjourn at 7:29.
Wow.